Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Steve Valliancourt. I represent Manchester, Ward 8, home of the Manchester Boston Regional Airport. Seldom have I been so pleased as to sit and hear the words of Pastor Niemöller and Thomas Jefferson in the same brief period. I, too, like Representative here to my right, had to exec bills today, so I couldn't be here for the whole time. I guess I should start by quoting a line from an old song, "Fools rush in where wise men fear to tread." I never have claimed to be either a fool or a wise man, so I'm not going to testify in either of those regards today. But I do claim to be somewhat of a historian, and I would wish to come to you with some historical perspective. And I confine my remarks to on page 2 of your resolution, lines 8 through 11, to that particular charge. Whereas there may be others that warrant impeachment, I confine my remarks to those. And I would, of course, say what other people have said, that you don't have to have many. One would be enough for impeachment. And I think the President of the United States warrants impeachment for this clause alone, that he's violated the United Nations Charter and other treaties prohibiting aggressive war by invading Iraq without just cause, and et cetera, et cetera. But rather than give you my own historical perspective, I have handed out to you a chapter from the recent book, Day of Reckoning, by that left-wing peacenik, Patrick J. Buchanan. Of course, I speak in jest because everybody knows that Patrick Buchanan is known as a stalwart conservative. They call him a paleocon, not to be confused with the neocon who led our country to such destruction in the past decade.
I'm sitting here today. I have you, I have Pat Buchanan, I have Mr. Wilson, I have Mopple, I have Mrs. French, and I have Mrs. Hall. This is the first time you guys are all talking the same thing. You know.
Well, we always talk the same thing because we all follow the Constitution of the United States. And may I suggest that anyone who takes the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Hampshire seriously would recognize that this president has violated the Constitution. And again, I'm not going to use my references to history to prove it. We'll let Mr. Buchanan do that. And just briefly, I have a quote from Cicero here that I thought I'd share with you. Cicero, the great Roman orator, said, "To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child." I don't think any of us here want to pretend that we're children, so I hope you'll just read this. But late in this chapter, it goes through the various doctrines that have been formulated by American presidents, starting with that great Monroe Doctrine by James Monroe in 1823, the Truman Doctrine protecting Greece and Turkey in 1947, then going on to the Eisenhower Doctrine, the Nixon Doctrine, Carter Doctrine, and the Reagan Doctrine. None of these great American doctrines entailed preemptive strikes. None endorsed preventive wars. All were defensive in character, with the exception of the Reagan Doctrine, which amounted to a rejection of the Brezhnev Doctrine that held that we would not allow nations to remain communist forever. None of these doctrines have taken us to where George Bush has taken us when we violate international law by deciding that preemptive strikes and preventative wars are acceptable. They are not. Nothing in the Constitution of the United States empowers a president to wage war against nations that have not attacked us. If for no other reason, this president should be impeached for that one reason. But I go, and as a Republican, I say fools rush in where wise men fear to tread. I don't put my allegiance to the Republican Party or to any party. I put my allegiance, first of all, to the United States, the Constitution, well, maybe first of all, to humanity in general, because we are committing war crimes by what this president has brought us to do, because we are killing people with no basis for it. You know, I've studied German history as well, and if you look back, not only should this president be impeached, he should be tried as a war criminal. The Nuremberg trials, and we didn't say, oh, we can't bring these Germans to trial because Europe is in ruins. There was an overriding principle that we cannot do what was done. And I'm not talking about burning the Jews or any of these crimes against humanity. There were 4 items in the Nuremberg trials. One was crimes against peace, another was crimes against war, which involved going to war without good cause. It is my contention that the Germans under their Fuhrer had more reason to annex Austria in 1936 to force the issue in Czechoslovakia in 1938, and indeed to go to war in Poland, an area contiguous to Germany in which German citizens were being harmed than the United States had in going to war against Iraq. Bush's threat of preventative war is unprecedented. Harry Truman never proposed war on Russia to stop Stalin from building atom bombs after they were tested by Russia in 1949. Lyndon Johnson did not threaten war on China when Mao exploded a nuclear bomb device in 1964. While it was U.S. policy to discourage the proliferation of nuclear weapons, Russia, Britain, France, China, Israel, South Africa, India, Pakistan, all had acquired the military technology to use these. We never went to war for that reason. This president has taken us beyond what any president in our history has done. He has made this country a pariah on the international scene. He has committed war crimes which will go down in history next to the great war crimes that were committed in the early 1940s. That's how strongly I feel about this, not as a Republican, not as a member of this House, but as a citizen of the world. We cannot allow this to go unanswered. And whether Vermont did it or Maine did, I don't care about any of that. It's before us now, and we must respond to it. So I urge this committee to vote yes. This president ought to be impeached, and I congratulate Penny Hall for standing up here and having the courage, neither a fool nor a wise man perhaps, but a courageous human being, to bring this before you.
Okay, I'll get you in a second. Reading the Constitution in there, Mr. Wilson had to go in front of Congress. Mr. Roosevelt had to go in front of Congress. We've got all the people, over 70% of the Americans said this is a great thing to do. We support it, and now we turn back and say, well, he lied to it.
We do not govern by opinion polls. We do not commit genocide by opinion polls.
But
so, I've sat here for an hour, and I've listened to you, Mr. Chairman, do what no committee in the history of this House has done. Badger witnesses by giving your opinion and arguing. If you have a question, I'll answer it. But I'm not here to argue with you as you've argued with every other witness. And frankly, I think you've been out of order, and I'm not going to answer to your arguments. If you have a question, I'll answer it. But I'm not going to listen to your arguments.
If you calm down, I'll answer your question.
No, you're going to ask a question.
I will ask you your question.
You're not going to argue with me.
I will never try to answer your question. Okay. What I'm saying is Mr. Wilson had to go to Congress. Mr. Roosevelt had to go to Congress, both for two major wars. Okay, Congress did not require Mr. Bush to come to Congress to declare war. In my opinion, Congress abdicated their responsibility under the Constitution. So why would you think, or do you think that if Congress abdicated their position under the Constitution about giving the president the right to declare war in there, why would they take the next level?
It is not the job of the Congress to ask the president to come to it to declare war. The president must go to Congress to ask it to declare war. He is responsible for not going to Congress to ask it.
The second part is...
I'm not going to argue with you.
Under the war... Okay, it's a second question. Under the War Powers Act in there, if the president he's allowed to go to war because he thinks it's critical, he is required to go to Congress in there within 48 hours, and then he must follow up in there. And he has to at least make one follow-up in every 6 months.
He could not have gotten a declaration of war from Congress, in my opinion, because there was no proof that this country had attacked us or had impinged upon our freedoms in any way. So he would not have gotten a declaration of war, and the fact that he didn't makes him guilty, not Congress.
Mr. Valliancourt.
Representative.
Thank you for appearing. I want to make one comment and then ask you a question. It seems like I've never seen a better example than this afternoon of the phrase politics makes strange bedfellows, because of the people from across the political spectrum who have come out and had their say about this. And I want to thank you for bringing the selection from Patrick Buchanan. As a former history teacher, I've always enjoyed your references to historical perspective.